You ready to go forward? Sometimes we have to go back. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
He desperately needs her to survive.
It sort of handled some incredibly delicate topics incredibly well.
I will never watch this again. What was that?
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
I'm James Smith.
Let me just go and change my shirt. All right.
Hello, and welcome back to Off Radar. My name's James Smith, and I am joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
And Neil Brock.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to your onboard flight today.
Wow,
onboard flight? God. What does that even mean? Hi.
Who we also call Nige, and he's just recovering from flu.
This is cool, sir.
Are you feeling better now, mate?
Oh, I'm flying, mate. See what I did there? No, I'm still feeling a bit rough. Still got a bit of a cough.
So you're just going to keep doing puns? Is this going to be like one of those where it's just like...
It's a pun episode, yeah.
It's a Nige pun episode. Strap yourselves in.
Strap yourself in. Let's dive in to Top Gun Maverick. So this film was actually suggested by your nephew. What's your nephew's name, Nige? Cody Brock.
Cody Brock. Hello, Cody. It was his birthday. Yeah, it's his birthday on Halloween the other day.
His name's Cody Brock.
Yes.
It's a cool name.
That's like one of the great... That's like a video game name that's just like a badass character. Kind of like Final Fight. The lead character was Cody. He was just like the best.
Or he could be in a Top Gun Maverick film.
Cody Brock is the lead name for a character. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise.
Well, thank you, Cody, for recommending us go away and watch this. Had we seen this film before Cody recommended it?
Nope.
So I had, I was lucky enough. It was the first film I saw at the cinema post-pandemic.
Wow,
so
really?
Went with a bunch of my mates from the Ardley crew. We rocked up to this swanky cinema in Banbury. We had like the big, comfortable sofa-type seats. Beer whilst you're watching it, and we'd kind of been, because we'd been playing poker online via like Zoom for the last sort of couple of years almost, and had been talking about classic films, and so often we were playing songs from the original Top Gun soundtrack, like the classic Kenny Loggins and Welcome to the Danger Zone, all that kind of stuff, and it just seemed very appropriate for us to get together post-pandemic and watch this at the cinema. So what a lovely night out it was too.
I mean, watching this at the cinema is how this film is intended. I did not see this at the cinema. I only watched it when your nephew recommended it. But, I mean, obviously, we've all seen the original Top Gun film.
Well, funny you say that. I had never seen the original Top Gun ever.
What? Before... Did you watch it prior to watching Maverick?
So, yeah, we're recording this in November of 2022. I watched Top Gun for the first time at the beginning of October 2022. After Maverick was recommended. I was like, I really should check out the original. And this isn't a spoiler for Maverick at all. I went into Top Gun thinking, I know the basics of it. I know Tom Cruise. I know like Maverick. I know Goose. I know Iceman. I know all these characters. I know the basic plot of the movie. But I didn't know the structure of it, and I didn't know I thought, it's very 1980s, very like USA. And then I watched Top Gun, and I was like, oh, that was a really fucking good movie.
Yeah.
As in, I was expecting it to be more hype than quality. And as soon as the name of the director came up of the original, I was like, oh, okay. Because it's, this is where I have a memory blank.
Tony Scott, yeah.
Tony Scott.
Ridley's brother.
Which you can tell through his like music video sequences from the original.
Tony Scott as a director was so bloody good in so much of what he did. And yeah, I watched Top Gun and I was like, I really bloody enjoyed that. And then I watched Maverick like about, I don't know, a week later.
Wow,
and,
so you've watched both at the right time in the sense of one after the other for the first time. I mean, for me, like the original, like I've always liked, but I've never loved that film, to be honest with you.
I've always enjoyed it. Well, it's funny actually, like when I was growing up, so Cody, obviously, who recommended this film, and I hasten to add, he recommended this film for us to watch before he had even seen it. That's how much he trusts our judgment. So, but when I was growing up, his dad, Paul Brock, my brother, he was like the world's biggest Top Gun fan, biggest like Tom Cruise fan. He was like the British version of Tom Cruise when he was kind of growing up. So he loved like fast cars, and he actually flipped his first car, his Mini, whilst listening to the Top Gun soundtrack. Like flipped it, went into a tree, and was like, I can no longer listen to the Top Gun soundtrack whilst driving my car. And like he was a huge influence on some of the films I watched. I remember he had like Top Gun on VHS, like Days of Thunder, The Blues Brothers. He had all these kind of like quintessentially classic.
Your brother had great taste, is what you're saying. Yeah, exactly.
So it's funny that he's kind of like almost passed the torch to Cody to tell
Cody's good.
Say, you know what, you need to recommend. You need to sort of review Top Gun Maverick. But yeah, there's something that like, intrinsically links my brother Paul and sort of Tom Cruise's character, like Pete Maverick Mitchell in the Top Gun movies. So yeah, that's kind of it for me. There's just like a family affair.
Yeah, well, there we go, and then we come full circle, much like the film.
Absolutely. We mentioned like Tony Scott and Ridley Scott as well, and they're both very, very renowned British directors as well, which kind of gets forgotten a little bit. The fact that they've made these very brash American movies, and certainly Top Gun as well was Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson, like these two producers who took way too much cocaine, slept with loads of prostitutes, would basically get anyone in the film for sexual favours kind of things. It was very strange. And Don Simpson, I think, died. You might have had an Elvis situation where he died on his toilet from like a heart attack. And I think this is one of the only films since he passed away where he actually got a producer's credit, because Tom Cruise and Bruckheimer both said, you know what, Don Simpson, Top Gun was part of his almost legacy. We're going to give him production credit on this, because without Don Simpson's influence, Top Gun as a thing wouldn't exist.
What do we have here? Yeah, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
Whatever.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell.
And Top Gun Maverick came out in 2022. It is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who he's worked with Tom Cruise before on Oblivion. He also did the Tron Legacy film. He directed Only the Brave, which was kind of like
Miles Teller in. It's like a firefighter's film.
Exactly.
Oh, that one.
Firefighter film. And he also worked with Miles Teller again in Spiderhead, which I've not seen.
What was that like? Spiderhead.
Yeah, came long before Spider-Man.
Wow.
It's written by Jim Cash, Jack Epps Jr. and Peter Craig, who we talked about briefly in The Batman, and so he's got a writing credit. And then it stars a lot of people, so let's just go through a couple to begin with. Tom Cruise, obviously, Miles Teller, who plays kind of Goose's son, Jennifer Connelly, and then plenty more people that we'll kind of get to as the film goes on. So yeah, Nige, I asked you to write a little bit of a synopsis for this one, if you don't mind.
Well, yeah, like I think a little bit of background. Obviously, as we've kind of discussed, Top Gun, a film about Pete Maverick Mitchell, who is basically a fighter pilot who lives on the edge. During the first film, his co-pilot Goose dies in a sort of unforeseen spin/accident where he's trying to eject from a plane. He smashes his skull into the top bit of the plane and dies. Rest of the film happens. Maverick saves the day. Yada yada yada. Top Gun Maverick, 30 years later, finds old Pete Mitchell Maverick still kind of jobbing his way in terms of the military, the Air Force. He has never kind of had that big promotion because he's just too busy taking risks or getting busted down for doing stupid things. At the start of the film, he's basically a test pilot, so he's flying like planes at insane speeds, like Mach 10, and Ed Harris rocks up as like a general about to close him down, so he quickly sneaks out and runs this incredible test. And luckily, his sort of guardian angel is Iceman from the first film. His rival has become almost his sort of savior, keeping him in work, keeping him flying planes, making sure he's not grounded. And after this most recent stunt, he essentially gets sent back to Top Gun, the school where he learnt the tricks of the trade and where he can finally be that person who passes the information on to a more kind of digitalized and, what's the word for it? I suppose fighter pilots don't really engage in dogfights anymore. It's all done from great distances. It's all done with radars and satellites and all this information that basically means that their sort of hard skills are lost. And there's a big secret mission to take on the unknown country of nasty people where they've basically got to do something that is, well, it seems impossible, but maybe there's one person out there who can make the impossible possible and maybe teach a few people some lessons along the way. But alas, going back to the Top Gun camp, Goose's son, aka Rooster, played by Miles Teller, is part of this elite fighting group, and bizarrely, one of his ex-flames, played by Jennifer Connelly, Penny Benjamin, who does get a little mention in the original Top Gun, owns a bar where everyone goes and has drinks and plays the piano, much like Goose does in the original film. Goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire. Now, unfortunately, you would think, oh, Goose's son must love Maverick. But unfortunately, Maverick helped keep him grounded due to a promise he had made to Rooster's mother, played by Meg Ryan in the original film. And so he'd never kind of forgiven him for that. So we kind of jump into this situation where you've got the old hand, the sort of student from the first film, is now the master.
Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kosinski, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
Morning, aviators.
What I love about his role in this film as Maverick is that, like you say, he is now the teacher, but he still has issues with those above him. In this case, I thought his boss, played wonderfully by John Hack, was fantastic, because you need that person to always. You can't have Tom Cruise just be like, well, I'm the boss now. You always need him to still be the Maverick.
In relation to this film, like one of the most memorable bits for me from the first film is a scene with Tom Skerritt, who plays Viper, and you might recognise him from films like Alien, quite a big star of the 80s, certainly. And he is essentially almost like Tom Cruise's character, Maverick, in the film Maverick, in the original Top Gun. And there's a scene where they basically get shipped out to go and take on the nasty Russians or Eastern Europeans or whatever they're supposed to be in their MiGs. And Viper says to Tom Cruise, says to Maverick, if you don't get a partner when you get to the ship, give me a call and I'll be your wingman. And it's like, wow. I always remember watching the original Top Gun and being like, that would have been so amazing. I wish that would have happened. And basically, Top Gun Maverick is that happening, where finally the master gets an opportunity to be on the mission. And that is what Pete Mitchell's character does in this. He essentially, because he's so good at flying this course,
he's so good
trying to get people to
he's basically the only person in the world that can do it, but
despite the fact he's like double the age or triple the age of every other person.
Just before we get there, I want to go back. So the beginning of this film, the first 20 minutes or so, is a 80s nostalgic hand job, and what I mean by that,
I don't know what I was just watching it, Smith. I don't know what you were doing.
Well, it's straight away they kick on with like the danger zone, don't they?
Well, they kick it off with the danger zone. They've got like a really almost Tony Scott-esque cut, like beginning to the film with the engines and the sun and the, it's all very like playing homage to the film, that first 20 minutes, and it's almost like a bit of a music video. It's going through the tracks. He gets on his bike like within the first 5 minutes. It's like, oh, quick, let's get the bike out. At that point, I was like, is this whole film going to be like this? Because if it is, I'm worried. Because
if it is, I'm in. I'm definitely
No. I agree with Smith. As someone who'd just seen the recent Top Gun, I was like, oh, please don't tell me it's going to be just like, here's a scene that's like the previous one.
Yeah, and there is plenty of that in this film, but at the depth of this film, it is about Maverick coming to terms with the death of Goose, putting his past behind him, which he's now having to face directly by meeting again Goose's son, who definitely played by Miles Teller, as you said, who's excellent in this film, but also really didn't need to have a tash like Goose. Like, people's dads don't go, right, son, you must have a beard like me or a tash like me when you're younger. But anyway, that was a very small gripe.
I like Miles Teller with a tash. That's the thing. I think he's,
he suits it well.
He's literally like my favourite actor at the moment, I think so. He can have a tash if he wants.
But on the original point of the kind of the nostalgic thing, there's so much in that, but what this film does do incredibly well is it moves it past that to give Maverick a vulnerability that I didn't get from the original film, and so much more depth that I would ever expect in a Tom Cruise film, of late, let's put it that way, of Mission Impossible and these type of films. And I was expecting something like that. But for me, like, one of the other things, we've talked a little bit about kind of like the Marvel universe in general, or even like the modern blockbuster, where, like, in Avatar, for instance, we know people are flying around massive green screen studios on ropes and stuff. And it's really clear that when you watch this, that it's not like that. This is the old blockbuster. These are real stunts. These are proper planes. These are stunt men and women, like, playing the roles. And obviously we know that Tom Cruise does this in a lot of his films.
Oh, ridiculous.
But so refreshing to see a film like this do this again, rather than, like, I thinking of a recent film I've watched, like, you just, like, you can't suspend your disbelief because you just know they're in a big green screen studio floating around on a rope. And with this film, it doesn't have that.
Watching some of the flight scenes, even when they weren't even dogfighting or anything like that, just some of the flight scenes, I was getting anxious watching it because I felt the tension. And what I loved, when you get those shots of them taking off or pulling G's, like going to G forces, you see their faces contorting because they're going through that, or at least they're being manipulated to go through that. And it's just that level of realism. I didn't come away from that film for any second thinking, oh, well, all the action scenes were good except for that bit which was clearly CGI, because it all felt 100% like those. And I'm sure like 99.9% of it was, but it just felt just a legit visual film. It just felt all real and like...
Yeah, I think, like, I hate watching TV where you're in a scene and there's two people in a car having a conversation and you can see that sort of screen go past them, like the video wall. And
we saw that with Cobra Kai season 5. Season 5, there's a scene where they're driving in Mexico. And in the background, it was just like... This feels almost so bad that it's a stylistic choice, but I think
it's like Airplane, that scene where he's driving and it's like you hit the cyclist and all sorts of stuff. Like, they should just do it like that every film.
What they've done with this as well, like, again, going into watching this film, you're expecting a massive, great, big plane fight, but actually, if you think about what the mission is, it's not really like a fight. It's like to fly through in fact, I won't try and describe the mission because it's so complicated.
But it's fantastic.
Fly through into a thing and blow up a crater and stuff like that. But anyway,
it's
my
like
point
is dump or something, isn't it?
Yeah, my point is it's not like a war. This film is not a war, and that's what I was expecting. Like, bringing it up today, I was expecting plane, fire, almost
that's
like
the
a
thing,
war
it
film.
Doesn't exist like that. Like in the military, that they sort of say, don't they, that there's only been like 5 kills from an actual pilot in the last 70 years or since the Vietnam War or however long it's been, because those sort of dogfights just don't exist anymore. And
war is done differently.
And Maverick is seen as kind of like this this guy from the past, very obviously so. Like, he's the last person to have shot someone down, and it's all about drones and people like that. But
jumping onto what Nige said there, what I love about this film is that in the 1980s, Tom Cruise Maverick was the king of cool. It was just like, oh, I want to be him. Like, you watch that first film and it's just like, obviously he still is one of the most handsome dudes ever, but he's like, in the 1980s one, he's super handsome. He's like, he's just cool. He just exudes coolness. What I love about this film is they don't shy away from the fact that he's an old dude. They really, and like, plaudits to Tom Cruise for like going, yeah, okay, I don't mind being thrown out on my arse in the bar scene, because it's just like he gets embarrassed throughout this film numerous times.
That bar scene, I mean, my favourite scene of the original film, or one of my favourite scenes, is the goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
Yeah.
Like, I have fond memories of that.
On the day that was filmed, like, sort of Tony Scott, like, out of nowhere, Anthony Edwards had no idea they were shooting that film. That was like added incredibly late into the original Top Gun. And it's like, as you say, it's one of the most memorable, like, spontaneous, fantastic scenes. And they even sort of call back to it, obviously, in Top Gun Maverick, both in terms of the performance from Miles Teller, who actually learnt it himself and actually played it on the piano. It wasn't faked at all. But also, I think it's the only time, or one of the very few times, where they actually do a flashback.
Yeah, but I love the fact that Tom Cruise is not in that bar for that moment. He's outside looking back at a moment in his time, a moment of his past. On your point of Maverick now, he's a lone wolf. He's got no wife, he's got no kids, he's got kind of nothing really. He's kind of, we fill the gaps because we don't know what the gaps are, but we kind of make our own mind up that he's lost in this world without, like, where he was.
He could have, like they say, he could have gone up and up the ranks to become, general whatever.
Admiral, yeah.
Yeah, but he loves, kind of flying planes. And it's like anything, like sometimes in a job, like you'll be, I know it's going to sound really weird, Smith, like I used to it's going to sound, I'm not equating flying planes to DVD QCing.
I don't know, my friend. The G-force you get from Care Bears at 3 a.m.
In fairness, we're both living life on the edge when you have to create those colour-coded spreadsheets. But yeah, that thing of where I was in a position where I probably could have gone at the time into editing and stuff. I was just like, I just kind of like QCing. And it sounds really stupid, but it's similar in the sense of Tom Cruise's character is like, I love flying planes. It's like, but if you know the higher up the ranks you go, the less likely you're going to be able to do that. And, and obviously the fact that he is such a maverick, he puts him in that position where he's just like, I'm just going to, sit and do what I do. I'm sure he gets paid handsomely to do what he does. And I got to say, I know we didn't touch on it too much, but I love the opening scene where he's flying that state-of-the-art plane, trying to hit it to Mach 10. And when he finally hits Mach 10, that kind of peacefulness, where you just see the plane. I mean, the cinematography in this film is astounding. And you just see this like plane doing Mach 10 flying through the sky, and it's just like, wow, it's like really poetic and beautiful. And I think this film does a really good job, as the original I think did in parts, of really making you understand why he loves doing what he does.
Well, the thing is as well, like you mentioned that first scene, and for me, I was really concerned watching the film at the start that it was going down the route of, say, another sort of franchise or well-known film that sort of came back, and that was like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, and how they had like the now infamous refrigerator scene, and they kind of jumped the shark. And I really thought this scene was getting perilously close, like to the ridiculous levels of like, oh, he's flying Mach 10 and all this like crazy stuff is going on. But it just, and I mean just, kept it that side of like, you know what, I can buy this, I'm still invested in this. Like, just because he's like in his 60s and some of the shots of his face he still looks like he's 30, and others he just looks fucking weird. like really weird Tom Cruise's face. I know he's a weird chap with all the Scientology stuff, but I was really worried it was going to jump the shark and we were going to be left with this like weird kind of situation where you've got this character trying to be something that he clearly cannot be in ridiculous situations, just trying to push the envelope to a limit where you just think this is just completely unbelievable and rubbish. But you're right, like his character comes through. There's even the most ridiculous bits still seem to be believable because of the force of his character and the force of his, as you say, like his drive to be the world's greatest pilot, essentially, that isn't afraid of taking risks.
Yeah, and I think the fact that that passing on the baton in the film is parallel, and he's kind of having a poke at himself being an older actor, and like one day passing like the roles that he can no longer do onto someone else. It's pretty evident, pretty clear, but he pokes fun at himself quite a lot in this film, and it's not something like Tom Cruise doesn't take himself incredibly seriously in film. I haven't seen him in a really serious film since, I don't know, Born on the 4th of July or something like that. So what I mean is, he plays like roles that he wants to play. However, there is a bit more. There's so much more to his character in this film than I've seen in. I can't even think of a film like 15 years, 20 years. Like
Collateral,
potentially the last one, 2004.
Yeah, Magnolia as well,
5.
a bit earlier than that. Yeah, I thought Collateral was fantastic. Like, I hear good things about Valkyrie, but I've never actually seen it, and that was sort of close to 2010. And then since then, it's been Mission Impossible, Jack Reacher, The Mummy, Oblivion, which I thought was terrible.
I've not seen that.
Really weird things, but
I've got to say, I really enjoyed like the last few Mission Impossible films, because exactly, and they're making them. It's going to be this, that, and this, race against time, blah blah blah, and they know what they are, don't they? They're not trying to be big character pieces or anything like that. But there was one with Henry Cavill that I really enjoyed. That was one of the Mission Impossible films that came out. I don't know if it was the most recent. But that was a lot of fun.
For me, sorry, not to go on a Mission Impossible. Like, they've always just lacked something for me. They've just been quite a generic blockbuster film.
The first one I loved.
I loved the first one.
Face reveal.
Oh, well, that was John Woo, wasn't it?
The John Woo one was
Metallica and Limp Bizkit on the soundtrack. Yeah.
I would almost compare, like, this, like, if I was watching this compared to like Bond, for instance, I really have not enjoyed like the latest Bond, for instance. So overcomplicated, so many characters, like up its own arse, like loads of action. Just basically recycling the same thing over and over. I feel like what this does is show you what a modern day blockbuster action film could be.
Well, it's the 100%. Film to save cinema, isn't it? Really, that's how they kind of pitch.
Well, that's what they wanted with Tenet, but they wanted that to be the film that saved cinema. But as we've discussed on this podcast, it clearly didn't.
Back to a previous pod. But like you said, like Tom Cruise kind of takes the piss out of himself. He's like not afraid to show himself old, and it's like, yeah, but wait a minute. Like, here's a guy who can is essentially the greatest fighter pilot in this universe. He's got like a gorgeous girlfriend played by like the 20 years younger than him, Jennifer Connelly, who when he was shooting Top Gun, she was like shooting Labyrinth. Let's let that sink in for a moment.
Wow.
And all right, he gets the sort of piss taken out of him in the bar at the start, but by 2/3 of the way through the film, everyone's like, who is this guy? He's amazing. And it's like, well, he kind of sort of takes the piss out of himself, but not really. He doesn't let his guard down that much. But
I love the first of the kind of dogfighty action scenes. I absolutely love, because it's so funny. Like I said, I'd watched Top Gun not a week or two before. So, and what I loved about the first Top Gun was, the 1980s filming technology, as it were. They could only do so much. And now with this film, it's like, oh wow, you can do so much more. And literally the first piece of action, aside from the the Mach 10 testing, when he's now at the Top Gun school, and he's he's training these new I guess he's
the best of the best, but the students
training he's testing that's it, the best, but not training. He's testing the best of the best, and they all know he's supposed to be good. And I love the first thing I love about this scene is they start off with Won't Get Fooled Again by The Who. So you have that wonderful synth noise, beautiful synth opening. And you've got like him saying, okay, guys, all the kind of Top Gunny tech talk. And this is what you got to do, and they're flying like next to each other, and he just splits them like straight down the middle. It's such a great shot though, and they're like, oh my god, and it's how that sequence tells a story in a matter of 10 minutes or something, with him taking each one down.
It's not even that long. It's about 5. It's quite short, but perfectly done. Yeah.
And when it comes to Rooster, you get that sense, and obviously like, kind of Maverick wants him to be the one that kind of takes him down. It's just like, no, he can't do it either. I've got to take him out as well. But I was just like, we're not even halfway through the movie yet, and we're already at this level of action. And sometimes action films, you can forget about the story they're trying to tell, but I think this film just perfectly balances action and character. And let's go into you want to change a subject, or within this film, we have to talk about, obviously, Val Kilmer, Iceman.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that was going to be the one thing I was going to say about like Tom Cruise taking the piss out of himself or appearing older and everything else. Like the deterioration of Val Kilmer in real life, unfortunately, due to his throat condition, is obviously incredibly tragic. But Tom Cruise pushed the studio so hard to make sure that Val Kilmer was included in this. And recently, Val Kilmer produced a documentary about himself and his acting career. It's called Val, and his son does a lot of the work in that. And for this film itself, they kind of spliced a lot of Val Kilmer's voice together, because now he can barely speak at all. Like, he's just not able to do so. And in this film, he plays the Admiral, as we mentioned earlier. He's someone who's kind of looked out for Maverick during his career, but his cancer's come back and he is close to death.
The Navy needs Maverick. The kid needs Maverick. That's why I fought for you. That's why you're still here.
I didn't know if he was going to be in the movie or not. You see the text messages, and I was just like, oh, this is, because I knew he was of ill health. I hadn't read much about it, but I knew he wasn't well. But I thought, oh, they're probably just going to play it off via text. So when he goes in the house, and sees the wife, and she says something like, it's returned, and I was like, oh wow, they're really kind of going with this in the kind of real world. And then he walks in, it's like, oh my god, it's Val Kilmer, and initially he's responding to, they're having this conversation, and amazingly, like, it's captivating, and yet it's Tom Cruise technically acting opposite a man who can't talk anymore and a computer screen, and yet it's shot and written so kind of wonderfully that it's really emotional. And like Tom Cruise, like, obviously the man can act his arse off, but he delivers so much kind of gravitas to that scene. It's just like, wow, it's really kind of moving. And then I just found it,
it's incredibly powerful. And I think even if you didn't know that Val Kilmer, was had that in real life, the fact how much of a contrast this is to the beefed up kind of testosterone of the young guys, like I can't remember his name, the guy who is like the new Maverick, basically.
Hangman.
Hangman, yes, yeah.
So like seeing that compared to basically what Val Kilmer's character in the film is like. It's a really clever way of using his character in the film, and like you say, heartbreaking that he's suffering in real life as well.
Who's the better pilot, you or me?
This is a nice moment. Let's not ruin it.
Val Kilmer, obviously, his wife lets Maverick in. His wife is played by the girl, like the niece from Uncle Buck. which again kind of shows the age differences between like the men in this film and their like female partners.
That's a bit of trivia
so
I
random.
did not know was coming.
That wasn't even Nige's trivia, but that's just like when because I was like, I really recognise that person. Was she in the original Top Gun? It's like, no, wait, Iceman didn't even have a partner in the original one. And it's like, no, it's the niece from Uncle Buck, and it's like, what?
The one thing I did enjoy, so as we said, the first part of this film in particular is very nostalgic with the music and all of that. What they do well at one point is they flip it, and just like Tom Cruise or Maverick, they, in the American football scene, they play One Republic, which, you know, is a very modern song, even though the scene is totally homoerotic and like summing
it's
it
nowhere
in
near as good as the volleyball scene, though, is it? And you know why they tried to reproduce it. And it was featured super heavily in the trailer as well. It just didn't quite work for me.
I think had they done that, you know, like a similar scene with 80s music at that point in the film, I just think you're just living off the nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
No, I thought the scene in this one worked beautifully because it was all about like teamwork, and it was, how are you gonna, you know, John Hamm walks onto the beach and he's like, what you're supposed to be doing there, and he's like, I'm training them like to look out for one another. And yeah, you could argue like, that's a bit far-fetched that playing, you know, this on the beach is good, but
looking super buff as well.
But yeah, I don't know. I just think it works in this film. Yeah, because in the original it was just a bunch of blokes playing volleyball, whereas in this it's like, this feels like an actual legit scene in the film. There feels like a reason this is in it. And yeah, like you say, Smith, it could have easily have gone down the let's just do the volleyball thing again and make it. And I think that would have been to the detriment of the movie. But thankfully, yeah, I think they
I think they
just
have
about
to
steer clear of it.
Yeah, get a balance between the nostalgia, the character, and the action and all of that, which I personally think they do well over the whole film. The love interest, what do we make of that?
I love Jennifer Connelly. I think she's a fantastic actress, and I think the idea of bringing back the Colonel's daughter, who gets referenced in the first Top Gun when they're in the bar, was a really nice touch. I just think the relationship is really badly written.
That's what I thought.
Don't think, like, she's good, don't get me wrong, but she's just not given anything to play with at all. And like, if you look back to the original one, the sort of relationship between Kelly McGillis, his character, and obviously Tom Cruise, I thought it worked really well. I know it was kind of quintessentially 80s, the love scene
always
with, like, the blue and the tongue.
I always think of Hot Shots where he's frying an egg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's like 9.5 Weeks reference, but I know what you mean. Like, it was ridiculous. But I felt really sorry for Jennifer Connelly. Like, she's great and she's really underutilized, and it kind of doesn't really make sense, but you've got to have kind of the subplot, I suppose, to keep it ticking along. But,
well, I think her character does, you know, you by having her character in it, it does bring a certain, it adds to part of his story about, actually, because I think without her, he's just, I'm the test pilot guy, whereas with her, it is, I think she reminds him of his age. And I think one of the scenes I really liked was when he's sneaking out of her room. Yes, and he jumps by the window and the daughter's there. I really like scenes like that. I thought, I can understand your criticism of her bit, like her role in this film, and it's she doesn't have much to work with. But as you said, it's Jennifer Connelly, and I think what she does with what she has is what Jennifer Connelly always does, is like deliver the goods.
She's a great actor, but I think for me the love story in this is, I don't know about what it is, but it's just not written well enough. So they kind of meet and all of a sudden they're together. It's the one thing in this film that kind of bugged me. I just didn't get on board with that. I understand why it's there. I understand why her character's there, and I know that he needs that in his life because, you know, like, he wants that. He wants to kind of settle down and be like the guy he really wants to be, but
he wants to have it all, essentially. He wants to be the fighter pilot. He wants the relationships. He wants people to respect him. He wants Val Kilmer's character to kind of be there to look out for him, to have that link with the past. But unfortunately,
would it have been stronger had he not found that? I think maybe it would have been. You know, that maybe his character with that missing that little part of his life. I know a lot of this film is about grief and a lot like him moving on from the past and that. So maybe he didn't need that. Anyway, a bit of an open question that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
I would say my kind of one criticism of this movie is I don't think Miles Teller is utilised enough. And I think he, given that you bring in Goose's son, I thought they were going to lean into that a lot more than they actually did. It did feel like more of a subplot. And I understand that you're making this film about, Maverick and it's his story. And maybe it's the right thing not to do the, almost like a cliche of like, oh, it's my dead best friend's son and he blames me for, this, that and the other. I didn't feel like they had him enough in it. It feels like he suddenly shows up more in the third act of the movie. It's like, oh, now we've got Miles Teller in it. Because up until that point, it almost feels like he's in it as much as the other pilot. So maybe that's a good... I feel like I get more a sense of who Hangman is throughout the...
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
With in fairness to Rooster, there's a bit Smith mentioned, like that first scene where he figures out how good they are, and Rooster essentially is the perfect wingman and sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
So Phoenix doesn't get kind of shot down, and that introduces his character that he's like he does things by the book. He's safety first. He's obviously got his dad, and that's basically the character they mould him to be for a lot of the film. Until, as you say, that third act where they kind of say, "Fly, Rooster, go, be something more." So
I did love. I think my favourite scene in the movie was the thing where they're like, John Hamm says, "Right, Maverick, you're out," and he's like, "Okay, I'm gone," and then he's basically throughout the movie, like Maverick has said to his, I'm going to call them students. He's basically said to them, You've got to fly at 300 feet. It's going to be like one of the most challenging things you ever do in a plane. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And they're like, it can't be done. And then basically he's trying to train them and they're not quite getting it.
Yeah, you've got to do it in like, is it 4 minutes or 3 minutes?
It's something crazy, yeah.
And then he's like, I'm going to do it in 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Don't see an event scheduled for you, sir. Well, I'm going anyway.
Nice.
Setting time to target, 2 minutes, 15 seconds.
2:15, that's impossible.
File attack point.
Maverick's inbound.
And so he, he's fired, as it were, and then the next scene, John Hamm's like barking out instructions, and they're like, "Wait a minute, someone's in the test run," and suddenly it's Tom Cruise. But that scene had me on the edge of my seat. There's no doubt about it, because it's like, brilliant. He's going to do it, but they make you feel a part of this journey, and he's not flying it effortlessly. He's not there going. He's like,
he's pushing.
His face is just like,
he's contorted, and you can see like all the like physical exertion it's taken to
pumping out.
Yeah, and like and even though you don't understand truly like what it takes to pilot one of those things, just the fact that he has to do a thing and then go upside down for a second in order to it's just so well done, that scene. It's like, okay, well it can be done.
Bullseye! Holy shit!
Well, I think we kind of need to go on to this end bit, and there's obviously we've discussed bits that we like and things we're perhaps not so sure about, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the biggest bugbear from the group that I went to watch this film with, Knowlesy especially. Now, obviously, they go to do the mission. Maverick, Knowlesy I mentioned before in this podcast, big fan of Muppets Christmas Carol, although to look at him you would think, it's not that person at all, but that's who Knowlesy is. Anyway, the final scene, they essentially try to complete the mission. There's a little bit of a screw up and the bad guys start chasing them, and Maverick essentially sacrifices himself to make sure that, I think it's Rooster, maybe someone else as well, gets away. So Maverick gets shot down. And my friend Knowlesy was insistent if the film would have ended there, it would have been the perfect film. But instead, you kind of get this weird, kind of like slightly cheese on toast bit where
it's a Hollywood ending.
Yeah, where essentially like Rooster comes back to try and save him. There's a bit of that Owen Wilson film, Behind Enemy Lines or whatever it's called, when they're just like running around as fighter pilots on the ground. And then there's like this retro, let's steal a plane from the 1980s and Top Gun this shit up before I think Handman comes and saves the day at the very end. But yeah, it's a bit much, I think is probably fair to say.
Yeah,
I that's such a great point. Like I thought when Maverick dies, when Maverick's plane is shot down, I was like, that's a pretty epic conclusion to that story. He got everybody away safely, everybody's gone, and then they're like, wait a minute, Rooster, he's heading back, and it's like, oh okay, so Rooster's gonna okay, so is he going to sacrifice himself? And it's like, right, okay, so Rooster now saves him, and then Tom Cruise saves him, and it's just like, what is this?
No, it gets so silly. It could have left it as a question mark that he's not.
Yes,
he's not dead.
Yeah,
you might see like the plane or something, and like maybe he still survives. But I think I imagine they're going to do another one.
Well, no, like Miles Teller has actually pitched that he really wants to do Top Gun Rooster, and he kind of almost said it as a joke in an interview, and now it's become something that might be a thing. Well,
that Etok's point earlier about Miles Teller's character Rooster being like not in this film enough. I think there is scope. There is scope for.
It's like Creed and Rocky, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
for him to evolve out of this film.
Yeah.
Let's move on to trivia. Nige, you got any for us on this one?
Well, trivia. Well, we've sort of talked about the 1980s Top Gun, which we sort of very much enjoyed, albeit I can't believe Etok only watched it a couple of minutes ago. And there was a lot of talk about obviously bringing people back. Now, obviously, you couldn't bring back Anthony Edwards because he had died in the original film, although Tom Cruise did give him a private screening where Goose gave it 2 thumbs up.
Oh, nice.
Meg Ryan as well was kind of written out. And obviously, the biggest character to not really make a return, other than obviously all the Vipers and Merlins and whatnot who flew in the sky, was, of course, Kelly McGillis's character. Now, she was in another film we've talked about on this podcast, Witness, as well, which I recommend going back and listening to. She didn't have a great career following on from Witness and Top Gun, I would say. Kind of disappeared a bit under the radar, I would say. Oh. But there were a lot of questions about Kelly McGillis. Why are you not in the Top Gun sequel? And she's like, because I look like my age. I'm a 65-year-old woman. The last thing that someone who looks like Tom Cruise is going to want to do is chase around an age-appropriate woman. So for that reason, Kelly McGillis was not included in this wonderful Top Gun Maverick.
My dad believed in you. I'm not going to make the same mistake.
Someone's not coming back from this.
Those are your pilots. Anything happens to them.
Smoke in the air! Smoke in the air!
You will never forgive yourself.
No turning back now.
Come on! Jeez!
Having any fun yet?
Etok, kick us off. I think you like it. What's your rating?
Oh, yes.
Do you like it?
I don't like it. With, like I say, just saw the original. I don't know if I'd seen this on its, because I think this film that's the beauty of certain films. You can watch a decent sequel. You'll be able to watch as a standalone film, I think, and I think this one you could.
Yeah.
But I think having seen the first, it just adds so much more to it, like any film. I was thinking about what to compare this to, and I was thinking like Ghostbusters Afterlife, as in a film that I think is the best sequel to a movie that come out 40 years before, because I don't acknowledge Ghostbusters 2. My point is, in terms of a sequel, sorry Nige, but yeah, I think like Top Gun Maverick is a fantastic sequel. I think it's a great standalone film. Like you guys, I think obviously you have your other issues with it, but I think my main one was just that last little bit of the movie. Yeah, that's the only issue I have with this film. But I went into this, I'd heard really good things about it. People like very cynical of the way certain films are made these days. Like people kind of shy away from that macho, 1980s attitude. I think this kind of fully embraced it, and I think it was stronger for it. It wasn't trying to be a film that ticked boxes. It was a film that was a film. It was like I think you guys described it best. It's a blockbuster movie. I wish I'd seen this at the cinema. I really do. So I'm going to go for a 7.5.
Okay.
Nice. Nige, what do you reckon?
So I am, as I said, the family connection with Top Gun. I absolutely love the original.
Related to Tom Cruise.
Related to Tom Cruise. Like when Tom Cruise, after the success of the first Top Gun, he was asked, do you want to do a sequel? And he said to do so would be irresponsible. Like that's how he thought about sort of taking this on. And it wasn't until sort of 2010s that they kind of really pushed to do this again. And then sadly, Tony Scott got very ill, ended up committing suicide because he was basically at his wit's end. which is a lovely way to go into this review. But the film eventually got there, essentially, and obviously we got this sequel, not your classic Top Gun 2, Top Gun Maverick. As Etok sort of eloquently put, it almost stands alone, but it's given so much extra by that original film. I think there were, for me, elements that disappointed me a little bit. Like, we've touched upon them, like the storyline with Jennifer Connelly doesn't quite cut the mustard for me. Some of the bits are... I kind of really wanted to get carried away by this film, but there was something always seemingly holding me back. But at the same time, I can't deny the fact that as a spectacle, it is fantastic. It looks amazing. There's so many amazing bits that hark back to the original film. Yeah, cheese on toast at the end. It's one of those where I kind of love it and hate it at the same time. And yeah, it's one of these that I wonder how I'm going to look back on this in, hopefully I live long enough to do so, but say in 30 years' time. Will I love this as much as I love the original Top Gun? I honestly couldn't say. Am I going to enjoy this film more as time goes on? Or am I going to start seeing those holes, those kind of like potential plot holes and bits I don't like, even larger than now? But despite all of that, I still really enjoyed this film, and I was lucky enough to see it at the cinema. I would heartily recommend it to people. Like Etok said, like, I know some deeply cynical people who don't really like 80s culture that have proclaimed this as the film that has saved cinema, that absolutely loved it. And for me, it's an 8 out of 10 film.
Oh, I feel like he's done a Nige.
No, I don't know. That was.
I pulled the brakes, you fly right by.
I thought at first he was like edging towards something much lower, and then and then at the end he kind of brought it up.
Yeah. So for me, like, original film. First of all, like, I like the original film, but like I said at the beginning, I'm not a massive fan of it. I thought this film was really enjoyable, and finally, like you kind of said, Etok, a modern day sequel with a bit more substance. I'm so used to seeing sequels and prequels and reboots, and how often are we left disappointed by them? I really enjoyed seeing Maverick as this vulnerable, lost character, a long way from what I was expecting of this. You know, I know he's assured and, you know, he is the best of the best, but outside of that, he is lost, and, you know, he's a loner, and I thought that was really well done and really well written. The action sequences, I think, are breathtaking, and one thing we haven't said, the sound design complement all of this beautifully. Yeah. Saying that, you know, like both of you, the ending, that stuck out for me, and also the love story. Saying that, I would give this 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this film. Not what I expected whatsoever, and I would even argue that it's better than the original.
I was going to say, it's so funny. It's like you both gave it an 8, and I seem to love it more, but gave it a 7.5.
Well, that's just evil Etok, isn't it? He's the Iceman of ratings. So.
And guys, what did you think? What did you think of Top Gun Maverick? Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Let us know what you think of Top Gun Maverick, what your rating is, and give us a shout to watch a film in the near future. I really need a wee-wee.
Yeah, me too.